Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game. These videos are based on your suggestions, and today's suggestion has come in from a viewer called I'm Laughing to Death, with a number 2, and they have suggested Flesh Golems. Golems are fascinating creatures in or outside of D&D, and I'm so glad that I get a chance to talk about them. I'll need to talk a little bit about golems in general to complete this video, but please, I thoroughly enjoy these creatures, so if you'd like to see me go into more detail about the individual types of golems, although they are plentiful, I can happily make more videos about the individual types. Golems were introduced to D&D in the 1975 Greyhawk supplement, and among those first few was the Flesh Golem. Mostly because Greyhawk has this very sort of Dracula, vampire, werewolf, Castlevania, Van Helsing kind of theme around it. And as we'll later see, the Flesh Golem is enormously inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein novel, specifically Frankenstein's monster, but I'll circle back to that in a little bit. In the Greyhawk supplement, players could sink their teeth into, or perhaps break them on, Flesh Golems, Iron Golems, and Stone Golems for the first time. But the idea of these creatures has become so adored that since the 70s, we've had clay golems, bone golems, wood golems, bronze, amber, mud, obsidian, silver, hammer, brain golems, furnace golems, radiant, glass, sand, ash, chitin, gemstone, diamond, emerald, ruby, adamantite, mithril, rope, puzzle golems, dragon flesh golems, chain golems, grave dirt golems, gear golems, fang golems, tombstone stained glass, and prismatic golems, to name maybe half of the types of golem that are out there. There's even a drolem, which sounds like a golem made out of someone being droll. Oh, how so humorous. But no, instead they are like a flesh golem, only made out of dragon parts, made to resemble a living dragon with a breath attack and everything, as opposed to a flesh golem made out of dragon flesh that resembles a human, which would be a dragon flesh golem. Because when you're playing a game that's been around as long as D&D, you need to make your distinctions clear between your drolems and your dragonflesh golems. But a golem, as I'm sure you can tell by the extensive list, can be made of pretty much anything, solid or even just viscous, as long as it's an inanimate, inert material. In fact, aside from the fact that they're usually depicted this way in the monster manual, they don't even have to look like humanoids. I've seen some golems look like giant steamrollers, huge clown-like jack-in-the-boxes, and other weird stuff like that, because in D&D a golem is a fusion of artisan craftsmanship in one form or another and magic, nothing more, nothing less. But that opens things up to limitless potential, because you could be an artisan sandcastle builder, so I'm sure you could even create a sandcastle golem if you so desired. It just so happens that when it comes to flesh golems, the artisan craft involved needs to be surgery, or perhaps I suppose you could be a butcher. In D&D, the way that golemancy works is that a spellcaster will either sculpt or have a craftsman create a very precise statue-like husk, in our case, of meat, and perhaps machine parts. And then the spellcaster, the golemancer, will infuse within this husk the spirit of an essence of an earth elemental. An elemental's essence is essential in the act of golemancy, because elementals in D&D are essentially just energy beings in the elemental planes of reality. They exist utterly independent of their form, but use nearby materials to animate them and give themselves a tangible presence, a body, an ability to experience physical space, whatever that might look like, whether it's made of fire or water, or in this case earth, something solid. So what a golemancer is essentially doing is simply choosing the vessel for an elemental spirit to act through. However, earth elementals tend not to act comfortably in a body that is not made of sand or stone or mud or something like that. It'll essentially resist being in this vessel, so numerous enchantments to entrap or entomb this spirit inside your crafted husk need to be enacted. So a golemancer needs to capture only the essence of an elemental and entomb it within this body that they've made for it, no matter how contrary to the elemental's nature that body might be. And perhaps no golem is more contrary to the elemental's nature than a flesh golem. The ever-decaying flesh kept fresh enough with infusions of blood through magical enchantments and even mechanical technology constantly break and rot and rust and need repairing over time. Frustrated with this bacteria-encrusted coffin of old meat, a golem may cry out in pain or anger or frustration, pushing air through lungs it's never used before, and are utterly unfamiliar and alien to the poor creature. In D&D, a special tome called the Manual of Golems is required to perform the act of golemancy, and is a magic item that can be awarded to or constructed by, or maybe even found by players. It's on page 180 of the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition. This tome is usually created by the artisan forming the shell of the golem, and as such is usually similarly constructed of materials related to their craft. A manual of stone golems, for example, might be written on slates bound together with leather wrappings from tradesmen's tools, for example. A ceramic cover might house the Manual of Clay Golems, and the Manual of Flesh Golems might be made out of leather tanned from the skin of humans or other humanoid creatures. As an interesting side note, books made out of human skin are quite common in history. There's an actual term for it. If you want to learn some pointlessly long words, the craft is known as anthropodermic bibliopegy. Anthro being human, dermic meaning skin, biblio meaning book. And you can see a few examples of such books all over the world, but there is an example here in Edinburgh where I live, in the Surgeons' Hall, the Surgeons' Museum. Edinburgh is extremely famous for its surgery, and this book is a little pocket book for notes and things like that, almost like a passport book or a wallet maybe. And it's made out of the notorious murderer William Burke, famous for being a grave robber turned killer here in Scotland, and a part of the infamous duo of Burke and Hare. But the manuals of golemancy are needed to create a golem. A spellcaster must have at least 2 5th level spell slots, and apparently, according to a little bit of digging that I've done online, an added extra bit of flavour is that in order to construct a Flesh Golem in particular, a spellcaster requires to fuse the following spells. They need to learn Animate Dead, Bull's Strength, and Geas. There's also potentially the requirement for a wish spell, although I think if you had wish you could probably just create someone. Either way, a Flesh Golem seems to be a fusion of a meat body, a spirit, and all of those abilities. Bull's Strength for the Flesh Golem's uncanny strength, Animate Dead because you're using a lot of dead meat, Geas, give this thing a quest that it cannot give up on and a requirement to follow orders. Maybe a wish spell to make sure that this all goes okay. If an aspiring golemancer cannot acquire the needed spells and materials, or if they don't have the 5th level spell slots available, they'll take 66 psychic damage upon reading the book, perhaps from the horrifying and nightmarish experiments required, or maybe the tome is just so potent and so adept at dealing with the transfusion of souls from one body to another, it drains a piece of the mind of the reader, a piece of their essence. Takes someone with a strong magical will to subvert that kind of power. Once the golem is successfully created, the book turns to dust and needs to be distilled and infused into a control item of some kind, like a crown or a gem, maybe a ring, a wand, or something like that, anything that the golemancer desires. And this item allows the golemancer to control their golem's every action. So long as they're holding whatever they've chose to put this essence into, golem must follow their every order. But why would someone want a golem though? What are they actually used for? Well, golems are hideously durable and unbelievably strong creatures that don't require any of the things that living beings like us do need to survive, like air or food or sleep. They're also ageless unless perhaps our Flesh Golem friend rots away to nothing over time, although generally enchantments and formidable amounts of formaldehyde tend to go quite a long way there, and the golem follows their creator's every instruction flawlessly. If given no instructions, they either go dormant, again not needing anything to sustain themselves, they can do that for eternity, or they'll follow their last command to the best of their ability. They have no knowledge of language and can't understand anyone, so they can't be tricked or convinced in any way. They are essentially the perfect bodyguards or guardians of tombs and treasure halls. In fact, many of the places that adventurers may fight golems as adversaries tend to be in ancient tombs long forgotten to the world. Dungeons filled with gold and traps left for eons as dust settles on all of the ornaments and treasure, and bacteria rots away the ropes that hold pit traps and spike walls and crossbow traps together. All the while a golem will still wait to exercise the last order that it was given, perhaps destroy any intruders. Whatever order it was that was given to them by a master who probably passed away from this world maybe thousands of years before. And it's this aspect that is very much inspired by mythological golems. Golems originate in Jewish mythology, and they mean a multitude of different things. They tend to be characterized by a shapeless image being given life by a creator. They appeared first, apparently, in Psalm 139:16, where the word galmi is used, meaning my golem, but refers to the writer describing a raw or material form that they have, yet to be shaped and completed perhaps by their creator God. It means an incomplete or uncultivated person, not yet shaped. Sometimes an insult, maybe it means brainless, or someone who's easily controlled. Comparatively, however, Adam of Adam and Eve is often said to be God's golem, sculpted into form and given life, only to become complete and no longer a golem, fully aware upon consuming the fruit of the tree of life. Later, around the Middle Ages, golems, as we know them today, start to arise, whereby rabbis or other worshippers conduct magical rituals and create a magic guardian, or a sort of odd jobs man really, out of inanimate matter, and breathe a facsimile of life into it. This tends to take the form of someone writing a sacred phrase, known as a Shem, and that phrase is often one of the true names of God. And then they place this piece of parchment in the mouth of the golem that they've constructed, which breathes life into it. Once removed from the mouth, the golem crumbles into inanimate parts once again. Stories of golems in this manner tend to follow instructions robotically and perhaps unintelligently, tend to cause problems, mostly for their creators, if their commands are not extremely specific, as one might perhaps with a wish spell. Might ask a golem, for example, to make me a sandwich, which might result in the golem trying to figure out how to transmute your skin into bread, for example. It is therefore equal parts a defender and a cautionary lesson, implying that God is the only person or being powerful enough to create a mindful golem, one that can think and feel and express themselves and grant it life. This idea has been quite pervasive all throughout the Middle Ages and beyond, and even features in some alchemical stories. Alchemical journals all the way through the Middle Ages and to tell tales of homunculi, and homunculus in D&D is another creature entirely, but its original meaning was an artificially created human through alchemy. Essentially, alchemists would create a golem that was just another artificially created human, a human not created by God, but equally not a dead thing either, raised from the dead. It wasn't necromancy, it was just a synthetic human. Mythological golem has inspired many stories and films since its inception, including Gustav Mehrink's novel and later silent film Der Golem, which was made in 1920, in which the golem moved in a robotic and sort of clumsy way, which directly inspired the movements of the later Frankenstein films, which leads us tidily back to our friend the Flesh Golem. Flesh Golems are the lowest challenge rating of all golems at 5, but are, in my opinion, one of the most interesting, especially to draw. They're also the only golem with a size of medium, all others being large, but it is by far the most intelligent, with an intelligence of 6 as opposed to 3 in all other golems. Flesh Golems have a fairly mediocre AC at 9, but they make up for that with being immune to all sorts of stuff, like lightning or poison and damage from non-magical weapons. They're immune to being charmed or exhausted and frightened, paralyzed, petrified, and any spell that would change their appearance or form. They're also resistant to magic and have advantage on saving throws against spells, and their weapon attacks are also magical, as golems are equal parts magic and flesh, or at least in the Flesh Golem's case. And they have some amazing abilities that tie them directly to the Frankenstein movies. Firstly, they absorb lightning damage, regaining HP equal to any damage dealt. I've chosen to add the odd steampunk and Tesla-style elements to incorporate this into the body of my Flesh Golem here, but this is likely a reference to the monster's creation in those films, where Frankenstein's monster is raised to the sky, an apparatus is struck by lightning, the energy from which awakens the brain and the palpitations and rhythm of the heart. This artificially created Flesh Golem giving rise to the classic "It's alive! It's alive!" scene, inspired by the angry mob with burning torches and pitchforks scene. The Flesh Golem has an aversion to fire, giving the creation disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the end of its next turn if it's subjected to fire. Although that could just be that it's cooking flesh. Without technically really being able to feel, it might just smell bacon and get very distracted. Finally, in its panic, the Flesh Golem can go into a rage, which sounds very reminiscent of the Frankenstein films. Whenever the Flesh Golem starts its turn with 40 or fewer HP, the DM needs to roll a d6. On a 6, the golem attacks the nearest creature to it, and will continue to do so until no enemies remain. In a blind and senseless rage, it destroys absolutely everything it can find, and this lasts, as I say, either until no enemies remain, until the flesh golem is destroyed, if it's healed back to full health, or if its creator can manage to calm it down, but rather than following the instructions through its control object, it needs to be convinced this time. The downside of the Flesh Golem is that its inspiration could have gone perhaps deeper. As opposed to the films that depict Frankenstein's monster, we could look to Shelley's actual novel and look at how the monster is depicted there. In the story, the monster presumes himself Victor Frankenstein's Adam. Again, another connection to the Jewish golems, and although he only mentions it once, I like to refer to him as Adam as opposed to the monster. Adam is an intelligent and articulate being. In fact, a decent portion of the book is taken from his perspective, as he learns to speak and comes to terms with society and its innate fear of his grotesqueness. It's a story that explores the nature of happiness and asks if we're born deserving certain entitlements like acceptance and joy and rights. Adam is a deeply philosophically interesting character and is intelligent enough to explore his thoughts. Comparatively, the Flesh Golem is basically a husk of meat that follows orders. But if you were so inclined, one way to create an Adam-style Flesh Golem, though, might be to tell the golem, as its creator, to learn, to read, to expand its intelligence. As a creature made of organic material, and perhaps even a golem with a brain in its head, it might have the capacity to learn. That's kind of up to the DM. But if you've gone to the lengths to create a Flesh Golem, and your party is needing a little bit of extra oomph, the DM could allow this creature to level up and put points in intelligence, perhaps to be a full-time companion. Or alternatively, you could use a golem that has functioned in this way, perhaps has learned over time, and could have developed into a more interesting lair-style monster, something akin to a vampire or an intelligent undead. I have used such a creature in one of my early campaigns, in a very sort of steampunk Victorian London campaign that I had. One of my particularly cocky players decided to flirt with some local bar staff and see if they could take one home. They found their job very easy, and in the morning they realized why, because they woke up with a searing pain in their side and noticed that one of their kidneys had been expertly surgically removed. And the quest began to track down, to hunt for the lost kidney. Eventually, after a lot of twists and turns, it turns out that this bartender had been blackmailed, trained in surgery by a mysterious doctor who could not leave their home. Agreeing to free this bartender from their blackmail and receive the kidney in kind as payment, my party discovered that their kidney snatcher was none other than an intelligent Flesh Golem, a scientist bent on creating the perfect body, becoming stronger and more powerful than any other human. So he had been stealing particularly good parts from various people from all over town. In this case, I invented the concept that the surgeon had learned the imprisonment spell after years and years of patience and had imprisoned their own body in a Flesh Golem construction of their own and was continuously tinkering with it to improve the body. So they still had their mind intact. But there might be many ways to use a Flesh Golem to make an intelligent adversary, or even just for the fun of having a horrendous necromantic husk follow your party around, or to destroy your players with. It's entirely up to you. They might be seen as abominations, but they aren't evil by any stretch of the imagination, not unless they're ordered to do something cruel. And even then, it wasn't their decision to do it in the first place. They have to obey. But anyway, guys, this was the Flesh Golem. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really loved getting to draw something this monstrous, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. If you did enjoy this video, please make sure to leave a little thumbs up, a little like down below. Maybe favourite this video and share it with the rest of your party if they have an upcoming encounter with Flesh Golems maybe. And if you really enjoy the content that I make, I'd urge you to press the little subscribe button, a little bell icon next to it so you get notified whenever I make videos. We're still a new channel, we are still freshly animated Flesh Golems ourselves, so anything that you can do like that really helps us to grow. So thank you very much. If you enjoyed this drawing in particular and you'd like a copy for yourself, I'd urge you to head over to Patreon as well, where backers at certain levels get either digital or physical prints of my Monster Mondays, every single one that I do each month. And if you want to see more from me, I also have an Instagram, a Facebook, and a Twitter, as well as a website. I'll leave links to those all down below. But until next time, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to be very specific when you're ordering your golem around, and happy monster hunting!